Great.
That's hopefully
Many years.
many years. You never know.
Yeah, I don't.
You know, obviously you came up against these
Always-
separate.
I think he would have moved around here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, just
Yeah. Like another part here. No, right.
I know, right. I think I told you I tried and I failed. It just feels. Oh, after every class. It's so fun. I don't have time for that. People want yeah, so I was like, don't get excited.
Did you try?
I joined the class.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't go at it, sorry.
Yeah. My husband did. Everybody was like, and the teachers were just like, okay, so what does that? No, I don't. You know, I'm not good at saying that.
No, I am not.
Review.
You're loud.
We're off and running because we were all so earlier. I don't see this.
Still traveling a lot. Thank you, Jason. That was beautifully reflective. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. Our congregation represents many traditions and faith backgrounds. It's a place that supports freedom of conscience of each individual as we work together to be a force for good in our community and beyond. So, whoever you are and wherever you happen to be on your journey, we celebrate your presence with us today. My name is Jan Freistack, and as your service leader today, I'd like to add a special welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time or the first time in a long time. If you're comfortable, we invite you to stand and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and what brought you here today.
My name is Trish Black. You may not know me, or may not recognize me. My husband Jim is with me. He's too shy to stand up. We have been members for nearly 10 years.
Oh.
So we have been gone for nearly 10. Oh, so we're thrilled to be back. We missed it, but we're going to keep going up. This is those grandkids.
Welcome, Trish and Jim. A special welcome to our guest speaker, the Reverend Karen Sandberg. We are so happy that you've joined us again. Are there any announcements at this time?
Good morning. I'm Marianne O'Dowd, and I just want to let everybody know, because I know that this group here always has like some issues or concerns that are on your mind. And this Thursday night, the Lively Issues Forum hosted by the League of Women Voters returns. It's 4:30 to 6:30 at Right on Door County. And this is your chance to make a pitch for what issues are top of mind for you. And this helps inform the League of Women Voters in planning and researching and actions that they will take for the coming year. So 4:30 to 6:30, it's a potluck. Bring your issues and a dish to share.
I'd like to share that the Packers won last night, but they didn't. But the sun did rise this morning, and it was so gorgeous. I had to take a picture. If you want to see it, it's just the most lovely thing.
I'd like to announce that I've been signed as a kicker next year for the Packers.
Can't wait for that, Terry. Good morning. I'm Anna Knapp, and as your board president, I'd like to invite you next Sunday to come have some coffee with me in the gathering room at 9 o'clock before the service. This will be a chance for you to hear about our board goals and give your input on what we should do with them. So come join me for coffee. I'm sure there'll also be some tea. And if you're lucky, I'll get to stop at the Pig beforehand and pick up some treats.
Just a quick announcement. I'm Carol Soper. The Peninsula Singers will be starting their rehearsals for the spring concert. First rehearsal will be on February 6th at the first, at Prince of Peace Lutheran, which is the one right off of 57. And at 6 o'clock, they'll start registration and social hour. There's usually treats and coffee and all kinds of goodies. But the actual rehearsal doesn't start until 7. So you've got plenty of time to come in there and get acquainted with everybody. I won't be joining you this year, but I've been there many times in the past, and it's a great group.
Okay, thank you. Please remember to silence your phones. And if you have any difficulty hearing during the service, just raise your hand and we can adjust the volume. And please join us for coffee and conversation following the service. And I might mention that today is National Hug Day, so keep that in mind. It is. And our talk back discussion will begin a bit later back in this room when you hear the chimes. All right, so at this time, let's begin our service with the lighting of the chalice. This is a reading with Love as My Guide by Cindy Terlazzo, and I've taken the liberty to make it into the plural. In the midst of life's challenges, fears, and even moments of crisis, it's helpful to gaze up at the night sky to see the vastness there and to remember that this moment in time is but a flicker. Not an inconsequential flicker, for what we do and think now does matter. Our work, though, as we light this chalice, is to let the debris of this world pass by while we anchor ourselves to what we know is true: love, kindness, compassion, and caring for this precious life, for this precious planet, and all who call this place home. This is our North Star. With love as our guide, how can we possibly go wrong? Please stand to sing hymn number 1021 in your teal book. It's a familiar one for those of us of a certain generation. Lean on me.
And when we get to the end of it, we're going to repeat the last phrase. We all need somebody to lean on.
Till I'm somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on. We all need somebody to lean on.
Please remain standing for the unison affirmation and doxology. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Praise that will on earth be sung, in every land, by every tongue. And now you may be seated. We find our joys are amplified and our concerns are lessened by sharing them with one another. Please keep in mind the service is live and saved on the internet, and don't share about another person unless you have their permission. Does anyone have something to share?
I would like you to send out some positive thoughts to my sister, Mary Jane, who lives in Menasha. She has been having difficulties in the last few days breathing. So please send her everything you can. Thank you.
Well, on Wednesday, I'm going to have a pacemaker put in. So not knowing anybody else in my crowd that's had one of those, if there any of you have had it, or I need a coach on the recovery. Hey, I got one. Another one. All right. So that's what's going on with me.
Okay.
Good morning. Glad to be here. That's a joy. Concern, my husband's mother went on hospice this week. She had a stroke on last Sunday and then has had a couple other strokes through this week. She's doing okay. Family is all here. One last son is showing up tonight. Prayers for her passing in peaceful ways. And I, it's time. She's 88. She's had a very good life, and health reasons are kind of falling into place that it's good for her to go. But it's a fractured family. And so it's going to be a little bit challenging this week with folks coming together. So thoughts for them as well. Thank you.
And it's my special joy to introduce the Reverend Karen Sandberg. You all know her as a retired UU minister and hospice chaplain. Oh, there's one more? Oh, I'm sorry. And a longtime friend of this congregation who often shares her gifts with us. But one tidbit you may not know about her is that she recently decided in her retirement to try and walk the entire Ice Age Trail. Now, this may take a couple years, but she states that nature is her holy cathedral, so she's very excited about this. It's a great goal. All right, at this time, we'll collect our offering. We remind ourselves of how much we've been given and that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. Please feel free to share here or online. And now, can we take a moment of quiet to center ourselves, let go of all that might be troubling us, and just be present in this moment in order to open our hearts to what Karen has to share with us.
So our reading today comes from Danielle Laporte. Right now, there are Tibetan Buddhist monks in a temple in Himalaya, endlessly reciting mantras for the cessation of your suffering. Someone you have not met yet is already dreaming about you. Someone's writing a book that you'll read one day, and it's going to change your life. Nuns in the Alps are in endless vigil, praying for the Spirit to alight the hearts of all of God's children. A farmer is looking out at his crops, and he's praying, nourish them. Someone wants to hold you and make you a cup of tea. Something's being invented right now that'll change how your generation will live and communicate and heal. The next great song is being rehearsed. Thousands of people in yoga classes, probably this morning, are intentionally sending light out from their heart chakras into the world. Millions of children are assuming that everything is amazing and that it will always be that way. Someone has recently cracked open their joyous, genuine nature because they did the hard work of hauling years of oppression off of their psyche. Someone just this second wished for world peace in earnest. Some civil servants are making sure that you get your mail and that your garbage is picked up and that the buses and trains run on time and that you are generally safe. Someone is regaining their sanity. Someone is being brought back from the dead. Someone is genuinely forgiving what seems almost unforgivable. Someone is curing the incurable. You, me, someone, now. So I'm a walker, and for decades, I woke up at 6 a.m. when I was working to walk the same route with my good friend Dorothy. And when you do that, you often walk past the same people in the same places at the same time. Do any of you have routes like that? I see a lot of heads nodding. Over the years, I felt a sense of this little early morning community that was going on, and we all faithfully showed up for each other each day. I never stopped and asked any of them their names, but we would nod and smile and say good morning. And if somebody was not in their spot, you wondered where they were. You felt a little relieved if they showed up again in a day or so. And if you stopped seeing them all together, you were concerned and you missed them. I found I began to care for those strangers in my life. A friend shared a similar but more touching story with me. She'd been a single mother and raised 2 children on her own. Her son had to walk to school on his own, and it wasn't particularly far, and I doubt he had to go both ways uphill like we had to do. Her son was about 8 or 9 at the time. Unbeknownst to my friend, as he walked, he passed an elderly gentleman's home. And this man noticed this little boy every morning, and he began to be sure that he had his cup of coffee and that he was sitting by the window so he could see this boy approach. This ritual began to mark the start of his day, and it brought him some comfort. In turn, at the end of the day, the man would find himself seeking the same spot to watch the little boy making his way back home. This pattern actually went on for a few years. The man never spoke to the boy. It was a silent but protective vigil, but it gave the man a small sense of connection. One day, the man noticed a car driving very slowly and very closely to the sidewalk as the boy was passing. The man became alarmed. He walked out his door and he stood on his porch in full view of that car. Nothing happened. Maybe the driver was just looking up an address on his phone, but the man felt an obligation to ensure that that boy was safe. The boy never noticed his quiet protector. One day, my friend and her son were just happening to be walking by, and the man was out in his yard. "Hello," he cried, and he went over to greet them. He walked over and introduced himself. After finding out that this was indeed the boy's mother, he told her of his habit of watching her son walk to and from school each day. They learned each other's names, and the boy was surprised that for the last couple of years, this man had been watching over him. They vowed to wave to one another each day, and a new habit grew. Care that once had been hidden was now shared, as the boy would sometimes stop and chat with the man if he was out in his yard. The boy's mother would sometimes send cookies for the boy to drop off. And now both were caring for one another. What had been unseen was now shared. And now, more importantly, it was doubled. I began to think about all the care that surrounds us that we may not even be aware of. It's truly a mystery, as there are things we can't know about, like the reading I shared earlier. Folks in yoga classes are sending their light out into the world. A farmer whispers a prayer to his crops to nourish us. Someone, somewhere, is writing the next big song, and I'm sure it's Taylor Swift. But then there's also the less grand, but just as meaningful support that from folks we don't really know. The coffee barista who sees you come in and starts your coffee before you even ask. The guy at the gym who smiles and says, "I got you," and he checks you in. The person who leaves painted rocks on a path out on a nature trail. Everyone who has ever donated blood. My sweet husband who shovels out the sidewalk of our entire block, not just to be helpful to the neighbors, but more so for the kids who walk that way on their way to school. People who put out bowls of water for pets. Volunteers who tend to nature trails or support hospitals. Everywhere we go, there are folks behind the scenes offering their talent and time. Our communities are full of murals or decorations or gardens or sidewalk poetry and art that others create just because they have to. And you and I live in communities where it's understood the importance of these offerings, and we are the lucky recipients of those gifts. My friend Shelby took the same on-ramp on Highway 441 in Appleton as she came from her gym each morning. The sun was often just rising, and she felt that little off-ramp was crying out for some happy daffodils. She got this burning desire to plant some there and have those bright flowers offer joy as people drove by. So she called the city to see what would it take to plant bulbs on this hillside. Well, surprisingly, it was not a simple task. She had to apply for a permit from the state and then another permit from the Department of Transportation so that officials could block off the ramp to protect the folks who were planting. And then, of course, there were all the bulbs to buy. But she did it, along with family and friends who helped. And it's just a hillside, and it's just flowers. And yet, the minute you see it, it takes your breath away. She took our breath away simply by doing something kind. I find it amazing that someone we might not even know goes through so much trouble just to try and brighten our day. I think this is important to fully acknowledge. People care for us, people who may not even know us. We care for one another collectively in ways that are quite a mystery in my estimation. We are not as alone as we sometimes fear. We are never alone. We're always in community with those whom we love, but also with those who live around us. Cole Arthur Riley says, to be able to marvel at the face of your neighbor with the same awe that we have for the mountaintop or the sunlight refracting, this manner of vision is what will keep us from destroying one another. And to be honest, with our divided nation right now, we all seem to want to find ways to destroy each other. Being prickly and angry with one another has become our new normal. And I began to wonder, could random acts of kindness, meditation, prayer, or mindful compassion towards one another, even to strangers, could it make a difference? Last month, 10,000 monks were praying for you in Tibet for world peace, especially holding Ukraine, Israel, and Palestine in those prayers, but also extending those prayers to every single person in the world. They were intentionally praying for us here in this room. They were praying for you. And that's pretty cool. But truthfully, if I hadn't read the article, I don't think I would have known that they were doing that for me. Does group prayer, meditation, or singular prayer, does it do anything? Is there any power in it? Specific people of faith will adamantly tell you yes, and then you might get coerced in joining their prayer chain, so be careful. But I confess I always struggled with that. Does praying for someone heal them? It seemed to me that God often just took some of them anyway. It seemed random to me and a bit privileged. Why does God bless one and not the other? Were they more faithful or more worthy? I couldn't make sense of a God like that. But over time, along with life experiences and maturity, I began to see that praying or meditating earnestly for someone changed me. It helped me to center myself. It gave me space to offer up love and compassion. It helped me to accept whatever happened. And then letting go of that sense of control, letting go of that outcome of what I thought should happen, offered me more peace. And then I was able to be more present for the one that I was praying for, because I was accepting what was, not upset that I didn't get what I wanted. Thich Nhat Hanh says that whenever we join our palms together in a daily practice of meditation, clarity and understanding are produced. And in turn, when there's more understanding, there's more love in our collective consciousness, and our state of health improves, not only as individuals, but as an entire community. And science tells us that when people act kindly towards one another, our brain releases a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin promotes social connection with others, and that influx of oxytocin dampens the activity of our amygdala, the region of our brain that registers fear and anxiety. There's a mystery and a lovely grace that happens when we offer kindness to others. Studies show that doing so actually reduces our fear and anxiety, and also the fear and anxiety of those we are offering kindness to. These calming effects reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And this increase of oxytocin helps to keep our heart rate strong and reduces our blood pressure. We actually feel better and our body is healthier when we are kind to others. As I think about it, I wonder why doctors aren't putting that as part of a prescription for good health care, to be kind. It seems like such a simple thing, and yet it's such a huge thing. At this very moment, there are more than 200 controlled experiments on humans, plants, and animals that suggest that compassionate, loving prayers or intentional good thoughts of one individual towards another actually can have an effect. These studies paint a picture of human consciousness that's perhaps infinite. Studies show that our individual mind appears to be connected with all other minds, no matter how far apart we are. And as Unitarian Universalists, we've always held to this idea because we believe fully in the interconnected web of life. We are all connected. So a 2005 study in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine compared secular and spiritual forms of meditation. And they found that spiritual meditation to be even more calming. In secular meditation, I'm sure all of you have done this, you might focus on something such as your breathing or a non-spiritual word. In spiritual meditation, you focus on a spiritual word or a text. Participants were divided into two groups, with some meditating using words of self-affirmation like, I am love, and others were asked to meditate with words that described a higher power, such as God or Spirit is love. And then they meditated for 20 minutes a day for 4 weeks. Researchers found that the group that practiced spiritual meditation showed greater decreases in anxiety and stress and exhibited a more positive attitude. And get this, they also tolerated pain more easily. That's huge. Scientists who study prayer believe that people who pray or meditate are benefiting from a feeling of emotional support. They actually feel less alone. Imagine carrying a backpack hour after hour after hour. It'll start to feel impossibly heavy. But if you can hand it off to someone, just to have them hold it for a while, it will feel lighter when you pick it up again. This is what prayer and meditation can do, says Amy Wolchott. She's the psychology director at the University of Colorado, Denver. It lets you put down your burden mentally just for a bit, and you can rest. I was thinking of those words as we sang, Lean on Me. Prayer and meditation fosters a sense of connection with whatever you may define as a higher power. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's other people, maybe it's family. But get this, it can also include the generations of people who have prayed and meditated before you, says Kevin Ladd, the director of the Social Psychology of Religion Lab at Indiana University. I like that. I like imagining that I'm standing on the prayers and intentions of my ancestors. That's powerful stuff. And one day, your loved ones may be standing on your prayers and intentions for them. I wonder if our sense of anger, our divisiveness right now has a lot to do with a lack of connection with the stranger or with the other. When did we stop caring? When did we throw in the towel and decide it's not worth it? Because science is telling us otherwise. Treating one another, no matter who they are, with kindness is very worth our effort for our own physical and our own mental health. We hold the power within our hands to change how we confront this world. So, what if we woke up each day and decided to do at least one act of kindness? How would that change our little corner of the world? How would that start to change the shape of our hearts towards those we currently find prickly and cactus-like? Collectively, I think it would make a huge difference. We've started a brand new year. It's always a chance to begin again. What if we actively decided to choose kindness in 2024? It's going to be a tough year. It doesn't have to be grand acts, although if you can pull that off, please go up for it. I know in Appleton, we have an active and compassionate community foundation that allows people to do great acts of kindness in enormous ways, ways that many of us never even know about, but add to our quality of life there. This congregation here, I know, is a force of nature that creates more love and compassion within this building and within your community, but also in other spaces in Door County. Kindness comes in all kinds of packages, and we offer it in all kinds of different situations. Sometimes kindness can only be offered through gritted teeth when someone we love is hurting or lashing out. Sometimes kindness is the only offering that can be given in times of tragedy. A pot of soup, doing a load of laundry. Those are difficult kindnesses at times. We know them well. Sometimes they don't feel like they're enough. Sometimes kind words or actions feel like a small Band-Aid trying to cover a gushing wound. Usually these kinds of kindnesses are given to our closest family or friends. But each of us knows the feeling of those difficult kindnesses. And to be on the receiving end of those kindnesses too is such a tender feeling. To have a friend show up with a loaf of banana bread. So simple and yet so touching. Kindness still offered within frustrations, kindness offered in the face of resentment, kindness offered in tragedy. We do those because we love. We do it because we are loved. And that for me is where holiness lies. Some will say that's where God is present. And I suppose that's where we may become those mythical hands of God. Being present in the difficult aspects of life for one another, in my estimation, is incredibly sacred work. And yet I confess, there's also a lovely beauty in small, random acts of kindness. The idea falls upon you suddenly, and it feels kind of exciting, a little crazy to do. But here's the thing. It could be as simple as a smile or a nice compliment to a stranger, or sharing a private joke with a friend that only you understand. I'll end with a story that I felt was changing for me. Back when I was working as a hospice chaplain, sometimes you just had lousy days, right? Families were fighting with one another. I think I'm going to see a little bit of that this week with my husband's family. Patients struggling with too much pain. Sometimes I would choose to do a random act of kindness just to sort of reset my day. I was in line at a drive-thru getting coffee, and the car in front of me was from a dealership that was actually owned by one of my patients' families. And I adored this woman. She was just a sweetheart. In fact, whenever I see a car with that family dealership logo on the car, I always think of her. She was positive, even though she had some very difficult physical things happening with her. So this car in front of me was old and it was dented and it was rusty. And the young woman behind the wheel looked like she could use a free cup of coffee, but she was in front of me, so I couldn't really pay for her. And I looked behind me, and there was a lovely woman in a shiny new Lexus with her manicured nails tapping on the wheel of her car while she listened to music. She didn't look frazzled at all. But then I thought, well, you don't know her. Maybe she's going through something hard right now. So I decided I was going to pay for her coffee. The rusty car in front of me was at the window now, and I saw her digging around in her glove compartment, even on the floor. And it looked like she couldn't find enough money to even pay for her coffee. And I sent her a little prayer of comfort and love. And she finally pulled away. And as I pulled up to the window, I quickly said to the gal behind the window, I said, I want to pay for the Lexus behind me. And she started to laugh. And she goes, that's so funny. The woman in front of you just paid for you. A stranger who looked like they didn't have much to share, decided to share with me. Kindness. How connecting. How full of grace. Take that lesson home with you today. You hold kindness in your hands every time you act. Hold kindness carefully on your tongue as you speak. Kindness is always a choice. So choose it. Go home, change the world, and make your own health better. Choose kindness. May it be so.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. Please stand and we'll sing hymn 1012. And he's going to play it through for us. Our closing words are from Ganga White, a renowned American yogi. He's written a poem called What If? What if our religion was each other? If our practice was our life? If prayer was our words? What if our temple was the earth? If forests were our church? If holy water, the rivers, lakes, and oceans? What if meditation was our relationships? If the teacher was life? If wisdom was self-knowledge? If love was the center of our being?